I just want everyone to know that I don't know who these people are. This is not my family. Okay? Thanks. Because I feel like I'm going to get comments about that. And no, I just like puffy paint sweatshirts. That's my thing. Hello. Hi. I found out today that baby swans are called cygnets. So maybe we'll have to like integrate that in somehow. I don't know. Hi, it's BB. I make videos about tarot and sometimes other things now. Maybe. I am here because I did a little VR not that long ago to, I forget who, let me check. To the May Queen. I did a VR to the May Queen decks I wish existed, and now I have more. So welcome to part 2 of decks I wish existed with your friend BB at Pure Red Velvet. I have 8 new decks that I wish existed. I'm hoping this becomes a series and that these things come to fruition. We'll see. So let's get into it. Okay, we're recording the screen now. Hopefully I'm just in like a little corner in your screen. We'll see. This is new for me. My first deck is called Romanticize Everything. It looks like this. Let's see the notes that I wrote about it. It's kind of a melting pot of styles and eras with beauty, sensuality, and softness in common. Some images are stripped down while others are opulent and rich. A deck in any of these themes would be captivating to me. Just a small collection, not too many, but you get the vibe. Opulence is on the menu, even if it's just a simplicity. There are a few that are more simple, like this girl on the bed here, or the ballerinas, or, you know, this person in the flowers. I love this kind of late Art Deco looking one. Yeah, so that's Romanticize Everything, and it can be about anything in life, and that's what I love about it. It's not just romanticizing love, it's romanticizing life. It's very Moulin Rouge, and not in aesthetic, but in ideology, I guess. The next deck I have is called Gouge Away. It's inspired by club and indie art, design, and fashion of the 90s. It mixes grunge, space age, normcore. You've got some, I forget what this one is called. It's like that style that Courtney Love pioneered. Oh, it says right there, Kinderwhore. And Kinderwhore. So we've got like some iconic imagery from cult films of the time, like In the Mood for Love, Chungking Express, The Doom Generation. I thought about like Party Girl. We've got some Basquiat. I feel like the 90s was a decade of redoing other decades, and it was pretty much the 30s through the 60s. Like you'll see 30s, 40s, 50s, 60s in 90s style, and I really love that because the 90s filter was so fun, and I think that we're still looking back at it fondly today. So very counterculture. There's also like this frenetic and highly stylized energy and look to this style. Like I said, very like art student style or like New York club kid style influenced. And then we have Disobey, which is my punk goth new wave 80s. I have a much bigger board than this, but these were just like specific images. I might expand on this one. We have very specific color stories. I have a lot of illustrations from the same artist here. They're very 80s, some like late 70s. Punk, by the way, started in the early 70s, but its height was like mid to late 70s, I would feel. Don't quote me, depending on what you're into or who your favorite punk band is. So it's a lot of rebellion against the system, but a lot of sensitivity within the culture and the community itself. I always felt like the more I learned about punk, the more I realized that like the most punk thing you can do is like be your authentic self, you know, in the face of patriarchy and capitalism. So that's really what this deck is about to me, as well as celebrating the music of punk, goth, and new wave. The next deck is called Outrun. And outrun is the unofficial name of a music style where the official name is synthwave. It's a retro futuristic style with dystopian vibes. One of my best friends likes to call it Drive because it reminds him of the movie Drive. And if you want just kind of like an idea of the music, just listen to the soundtrack for Drive. The idea is kind of you're driving out of the city and you're running away from the cops or some bad situation, or you're running into the city to like get the thing and like get the money or get the girl, or you know, that kind of thing. So you'll see a lot of neons, a lot of black. It has a very Blade Runner, like Ghost in the Shell vibe. And like I said, it's futuristic, but it's retro at the same time because the 80s like had, and 90s, like this was a pretty popular aesthetic. And the music itself that inspires this aesthetic, or maybe it's vice versa, who knows? I could probably look that up. You could probably look that up if you want. It's based on 80s sounding music. Synthwave is synthesizer heavy and it's very 80s sounding. It's very urban, so we're talking dystopian, not like farms and agriculture, but in the cities. It's also very heavily Asian influenced, and I think there's a few reasons for that. Asian artists may have been the creators of this aesthetic, but I think we associate this aesthetic with Asian cultures and Asian countries because they tend to have more advanced technology than the rest of the world, and we see the future as being more and more technological. They also have very large populations. For instance, China has a very large population, and so we can kind of see with, you know, the population boom that we're experiencing more and more as time goes on, what cities and countries will need to do to accommodate or like these masses of people. So that feels like very futuristic as well. And then you add the layer of these countries have like the oldest civilizations in existence. So they are in the future. You know what I mean? Like, I'm in America and we are babies compared to, you know, the centuries of dynasties that Asia has had. So just by pure experience and like longevity of civilization.
Editing BB here. I just wanted to add too that cultures in Eastern Asia, specifically like Japan and Korea, are known for their very aesthetic and like design driven culture, like pop culture and media, and they just go hard in the paint on aesthetics, and they're kind of really great at it. Like, not even kind of. So I think that that's like a major element.
Okay, the next one I have is called Tombstone. And this is a hard one. We don't want to glorify the genocide of indigenous people in this country, and we want to have reverence and respect for it. There's also something so interesting and compelling about the Wild West and the frontier. So I think what I would want in this case is if it could be done. I don't know, because I am not an authority or a scholar on these things, but if there could be like a fantasy Wild West or frontier themed deck that could be very obviously fantasy and like very inclusive and very culturally sensitive and accurate if we're taking inspiration from these things, with the added layer of fantasy on top. So you don't have to necessarily, you know, have disparity in like, or complete lack of like equality or humanity in the way that the government treated Indigenous people. Or I would also love to see like a historically influenced deck that didn't focus on the atrocities. But then again, like I don't know. Like I don't know if that's respectful to have a deck that doesn't acknowledge those things, you know? You can't rewrite history and I don't want to forget history, but I'd love to really appreciate that time and the people of that time and like how they lived on a more minute scale, not necessarily on like a macro scale of what was happening throughout the country. But you know, if that whole idea isn't the most like sensitive thing, then I totally get why this deck doesn't exist. I wish it could though. Let's see what notes I had for this. Yeah, like goth cowboys. I love how like goth cowboy is like an aesthetic now. And I think it's so cool to mix those things. And cowboys were of so many different backgrounds, you know, like we had indigenous Mexicans, we had black cowboys. So it would be really cool to have a deck based on the lives and cultures with respect and the utmost appreciation for these things. The next deck I have that I wish for is called NFR, Norman fucking Rockwell. I named it after the album because I think it's so catchy and great, but it's based off of kind of Norman Rockwell. It's kind of like American nostalgia and idealism and sentimentality, but with a twist. So not just your average Norman Rockwell. I chose a lot of images with some either surrealism or some humor. And sometimes it's neither, and it's just kind of quiet or intimate moments that don't often get platforms in media, especially in this medium of like acrylic or oil painting or watercolor. This idea of everyday moments, which was very like Rockwell-esque. There's a lot of retro stuff in here too, of course, because I'm just like, I love retro. Okay, so one more, and I hope you guys will like this one. I like this one because you don't usually see a lot of this from me, but like I was like, why not show you what I like, right? So I named this one Only Lovers Left Alive, and it's my vampire deck. And I don't know if I have any notes for you on this. Like, just soak it in, my friends. Just soak it in. It's a little sexy. It's a little scary. It's a little dangerous, you know? It's very goth. And there you have it. Those are my decks I wish existed, part 2. Thank you to the May Queen for creating this because it's such a great tag and it really stands the test of time. This is an old tag and I don't think anyone's doing it right now, but I'd love to see yours if you're interested in making, you don't have to do it in this format, but yeah, I want to see what you want to buy that isn't out there yet already or that you haven't heard of. And if there are any decks that kind of fit the bill for my wish list, let me know because I would love that so much. As always, I want to thank you for being here. Thanks for being curious. Thanks for being my friend. And my mom's coming. I gotta go.